Right, well, time now for our final Ask the Expert slot of this edition, and we're joined by Jenna Tarry of WR Partners. And Jenna, we were talking just before we came on air about the challenges of running the HR side of the operation that you do during lockdown times. But you joined the company during lockdown as well, didn't you? What was that like?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I joined WR Partners at the end of January of this year. And yeah, that proved its difficulties. I mean, my interview process was, all on Zoom. I was fortunate enough, I went for a walk around Hormond Hill with a couple of individuals just to get to meet them in person. But the rest was literally virtual, sort of joining the business. So the first interaction I had with a lot of individuals was on the good old Zoom. And I can definitely say, the first week of joining, the sort of Zoom fatigue definitely kicked in. And that sort of posh smile and the face smile that you put on, it starts to wear thin a little bit, and sort of, from that aspect, then really it was a case of trying to work out where everybody's placed in the business. And I suppose that was the other difficulty. Normally you go into an office, you can see where people are physically sat, which departments people are working in. On Zoom, it's just faces on a screen and you've got no idea who works in which department. So it's a little bit more difficult, especially when they're spread out over 6 offices, which WR Partners now have.
That's
as well.
the HR background in you though as well, isn't it? Wanting to know how things are structured and how things work and when things are in the right,
absolutely.
Right boxes. Because you are very much part of the team now, specifically to front this brand new HR service, aren't you? So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so basically WR have taken a more forward-thinking approach really, where they want to support employers and companies with a full range of advisory services. So it's not just the number crunching and the compliance accountancy work. And I've actually been brought in to head up an outsourced HR consultancy service. So that's supporting small and medium businesses that don't have their own HR department with all inquiries relating from the employment life cycle. So that can be recruitment, onboarding. Obviously, I've had first-hand during the lockdown, and then anything through to training, development, employment relations issues, and then sickness, health, and well-being, which obviously paramount at the moment. With the ongoing pandemic, right the way through to the exit of individuals. At the end of that cycle.
So but you've no background in accountancy of any sort. You are purely an HR professional.
I am, yeah. So don't ask me any technical questions about accounts or tax, because I will not have.
We left that to Paul earlier for the budget. He's taken care of all of that for us already. So.
I'm sure you can ask Paul some employment questions, and he'd probably have the same answer.
How important is it at the moment then for companies to understand that what they were doing 2 or 3 years ago from an HR structural point of view maybe has to be ripped up and rethought?
Yeah, and I think that the pandemic has made a lot of business owners rethink what they were once originally doing, especially when you look at the hospitality trade. A lot of business owners weren't able to open the doors to the public coming in, so a lot diversified their offering to takeaway services. And that has a direct impact then to what the employees are doing. You can't instantly just say to a chef, you're going to become a delivery driver tomorrow. They haven't necessarily got the skills, the capabilities. And actually, if it's a fundamental change to an individual's terms and conditions, you have to legally consult with them about the change. So it's really getting business owners to be forward thinking about where their plans are in the future, whether they've even thought about creating a 5-year, 10-year plan, etc. And what those plans consist of and how that impacts the employees and what skills they need, to meet their end goals.
So is it help with issues that companies know they need help with that they're talking to you about? Or are you needing to tell them about the issues they need to be considering that they weren't considering?
It's a little bit of both, to be honest. You've always got that day-to-day operational factors and some of the compliance aspects that people know that they need help with, but they just don't know where to go. So obviously that's a service we can help them with. And once we've got our foot in the door and we've built those long-term relationships with the clients, it's really sort of providing that support to say, okay, so where are we at the moment? Where do you want to be in the future? And how are we going to achieve that, through your people and effective people management practices?
How far in the future dare we look at the moment, do you think?
That's a difficult question. I mean, it's very turbulent at the moment, isn't it? And nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow. But I think it's really getting business owners to come up with backup plans. So put a plan in place if you possibly can, and have a backup, position as well.
Where do you stand on the issue at the moment with remote hybrid working, back at the office, staying at home? We've heard in the headlines again this week that plan B, if we end up having to revert to that, could mean asking people to go and stay at home again. Where do you feel employers are on that at the moment?
I think obviously depending on the industry and the sector that they're in, obviously manufacturing, that's very difficult to implement, even if it is at all possible. But I think if you are able to work from home, I think a lot of employers have adapted. You know, we've had 18, 19 months of working from home now, and I think employers and employees have adapted to that way of working. Personally, I think there's a lot more for the hybrid effect, you know, so a mixture of the both. But I think employers really need to stop and think and consider that if they are asking people to come back into the office, what is the main reason for doing so? If it's literally to sit there and work, then have to question what gain are they actually getting by pulling people back into the office, where they might not necessarily want that. You know, they might be quite happy working from home. A lot of the sort of office environment now is around collaboration, so team working. And I think, again, employers really need to consider if that is the main aim, if that is the main objective of bringing people back into the workplace, have they got their working environment set up to encourage and facilitate that collaboration? You know, have they got areas where people can sit down in a team and have a good chat over a coffee, you know, some biscuits, etc., and really sort of brainstorm and thrash out some ideas. So I think employers need to really stop and think about, you know, what do they need from their employees and how they can facilitate that working environment which best meets their demands.
Do you think the hybrid working, I mean, obviously it was something that probably further down the line it was going to happen, but obviously the pandemic has really spread that, you know, it's speeded it up, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think pre-pandemic, you know, I worked with a lot of clients, and if an individual asked for flexible working, i.e. changing the working hours or to work from home, pretty much the answer instantly was no.
Yes.
And when we drill down with clients to understand, okay, what's their answer for that? I think from an employer's point of view, it was fear of change.
Yeah.
They hadn't necessarily done it, and they didn't really want to think and consider it. Things worked well when everybody sat in the office. They could see, they could observe what their employees are doing. The pandemic came along, obviously, and things pretty much changed overnight. You know, and a lot of employers were really, really good at adapting very, very quickly, getting the equipment at home, etc. So I think now being forced into a situation has made employers and managers more aware and more open to that home working environment. But again, that brings challenges. You know, managers were used to managing face-to-face in person. Some managers have really struggled to manage remotely, and having that trust of what employees are actually doing at home when they can't physically see them.
There isn't a one-size-fits-all to any of this, is there at all?
No.
There's talk of this, now forgive me if I don't get the title right, is it called the right to disconnect? This sort of legislation which is designed to try to reduce burnout and stop increasing work-life balance. What's that all about, and what difference could that make?
So yeah, so that's just a proposal at the moment. It's not confirmed, but basically Ireland and a couple of other countries, France included, implemented a right to disconnect legislation, and the essence of that is employees should not be penalised or adversely sort of affected from the right to say, I'm not going to be checking my emails, I'm not going to be answering the telephone outside of the normal working hours. Now, I appreciate there's always some flexibility, which is required, but I think on the general whole, managers can't be saying to their employees 5 days a week, we're going to be phoning you at 9, 10 o'clock at night, and we expect you to answer the phone.
It's the expectation and the guilt if you don't answer.
Exactly.
I was going to say, do you feel like, you know, we've all got our smartphones, we're all connected, whether you're using a voice over IP apps on your mobile to do your working or whatever. You kind of almost feel obliged when a notification comes to take a look at it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's a lot of initiatives out there at the moment as well to sort of say, there's a lot of time spent on the screen, whether it be working on a laptop, on a computer, or using a mobile phone device. You know, we live off our mobile phones at the moment. To say, do we need to be spending that much time on our phones and on our devices? You know, there's a lot of companies and employees out there now saying sort of focus Friday. So no Zoom meetings, you know, have the day literally to focus on work, focus on projects that you're completing, and not being interrupted all the time from, you know, sort of meetings and activities.
Are you disciplined? What are you like at checking your phone and your mobile devices then when you're at the
I would
office?
love to say I'm completely disciplined, but that might be a little white lie.
but sometimes there's genuine need, isn't there? Because
absolutely.
actually, you know, maybe 5 minutes here and there at some antisocial hour could save you a couple of hours during the working day at another time. Isn't it? So you have to have a bit of flexibility, don't you?
You do, and you know, as individuals, especially with remote working, you have to be or identify when you need a break. You can't sit at your laptop for 8 hours a day without a break. You won't be productive. You won't be delivering anything achievable. So as individuals, you have to understand your own strengths and weaknesses when you need a break or when you think you can work through, etc. So again, you know, is having a break, looking at your phone, at a sort of an adequate break? For some individuals it will be. For some individuals they need to get outside, go for a quick walk, etc. You know, break up their day and switch off and refocus again.
Which brings us back to where we started, really saying, you know, it's horses for courses, and making sure that's where then you have to make sure you understand a bit about the employers that you're dealing with to see what their particular circumstances are.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, just for one employer, they'll have a multitude of characters and individuals working for them. So again, it's really encouraging employers to understand what their employees want and how they tick and how they function. You know, so again, we're looking really at focusing on maybe questionnaires, doing surveys, you know, from an employee perspective. What do they want? If they're not getting what they want, can the employers provide that? And the bottom line is always, a happy workforce is a productive workforce. And you'll know as individuals yourselves, if you're not happy, you're not productive.
No, you're not.
You know, so employers have really got to encourage that and understand how to support and encourage that in the workplace.
So you're going to be busy over the next few
We're
months,
going to
aren't you?
be.
Thank you so much for your time. Great to meet
problem.
you, and we'll look forward to seeing you back in the studio sometime soon. Jenna,
Brilliant.
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Now, that's almost all we've got time for on Shropshire Business Live TV this issue, but just one more thing to treat you to. Now, Chris and I were part of the audience a few weeks ago now at a Shropshire Business Live event, which was held at the fantastic Hawkston Hall just outside Worm. If you've never been to that place, I'd recommend you visit. It's a stunning place. Shropshire Business Magazine came together with our friends at Yarrington and Throgmorton Associates to hold a business networking breakfast, and part of this was 2 panels to find out how businesses are feeling about the climate right now and to deliver some expert advice. In our last show, we showed you the expert advice panel, so this time we've got the other panel, which was 4 very different businesses talking about how they have experienced the ups and downs, the roller coaster of the last 18 months. So we'll hand the floor over to the panellists, who were Beth Heath from Shropshire Festivals, we had Kevin Williams from Zoom 1 Hour, Duncan McGregor from Planet Donut, and also Sally Thiemens from Good to Great.